One of the things that helped me was that I wasn't alone on the journey. At that time, I had a cousin who lived with us. My dad's younger sister's daughter, she lived with us. She was older than me by 5 years. So it was easy for me and her, to talk. We were in the same boat, same situation. She was also done with school. She was working. So it was easier for us to converse. Where we live is a community of, you think people don't see what you're doing, but they actually see and they notice. So it came to a point where the people we were in the same age bracket with, every single one of them got married and we were still at home, me and her. It got to a point where like after my one is magana, like all your mates have gotten married, you're the only person left. It got to a point where the younger generations, like people that we were older than our set, had all gotten married, they fled out. And we were still at home. We were still unmarried, and it was really really difficult for us. It got to a point where we stopped going to weddings, we stopped going to naming ceremonies, we stopped going to family functions, because there are people that are just waiting for an opportunity to remind you that you're actually not married. I mean, do they need to remind you, but then they are waiting for that opportunity to remind you that you weren't married. It wasn't much of a pressure from immediate family, but sometimes we could feel our mom eyeballing us, especially when they brought invitation cards to wedding, and my mom would be like, "Amma dai ba za ku ba, don wannan kanwa ku ce. You're not even itu abun kunya ne ku je bikin." And then we'll be like, "No, we're not going." It got to a point where we were so talked about. Oh my God, Northern Nigeria. I mean, I was 23. She was 28. It got to a point where we were so talked about that in muka fita unguwa, ba za mu shigo ta layin gidanmu ba. We have to pass a longer route to our house just to avoid the people, irin mazan bakin titin nan masu shago, masu, people masu zaman majalisa, because we felt they were talking about us. We felt they were gossiping about us. We felt we were the topic of discussions. And there were neighbors that would actually tell you these things. They would tell you to your face, "Ya kamata ki aure fa." So my older sister got married at 21. She was a level 300 at that time when she got married. So Halife was like big, and it was like the talk of the area. Oh, an kamata akwati goma sha biyu. And it got to a point where people began to feel like we set those standards for ourselves as well, because an kama ta akwati sha biyu, so we're looking for somebody that will probably bring 15 or 16, or so um there was that assumption that that was probably what we were looking for, somebody who was rich, somebody who was this, that. So as I said, my aunties, my extended family, they always somehow told me that I was the less good looking one amongst my siblings. So it never really got to me until the issue of me not being married came up, and they waited for every opportunity to remind me of that. And I used one of the family functions to remind them that, to actually host a small family meeting, to tell them, my aunties, idan akwai wanda ke ciyar da ni a cikinku, don Allah kar wanda ya ƙara bani abinci. If you're the one feeding me, if I'm sitting on your head, ku tashi. If I'm sitting on your head, ku ture ni. Idan kuna bani abinci, ku daina bani abinci. They always felt like I was waiting for this guy that might take forever to get married. And then I was chubby, and they felt ke jikin ki dama kina da jikin girma. So it always felt like there was attack where it wasn't necessary, where it wasn't needed, simply because I had stood my ground that this is the person that I want. And sometimes there would be guys that would come through my aunties, and then I'll have to turn them down because I don't want you. This is who I want, and this is who I am waiting for. So it was really difficult for me at that time, because there were a lot of forces. There were a lot of forces, that were against you. So, and I always discuss this with my boyfriend, my husband. So I always discussed my fears, and he would tell me, "Don't worry, ours is a forever thing. Inshallah, everything will come to pass one day." This is a guy that wasn't working, and we're already planning our future together. So, Alhamdulillah, I told my cousin one day that we need to stop sleeping. We need to stop sleeping. The period of us sleeping through the night has to pass. So every time we would wake up for tahajjud, we didn't sleep for 6 months. It was tahajjud after tahajjud after tahajjud. Difficult for her than it was for me, because I mean, she was in her late 20s, she was approaching 30s. So it got to a point where the noise was so much so that she began to believe she began to not believe in love anymore. She just felt she was at a point in her life where Kawai, whoever comes, if he's ready, he's decent, he's religious, he's okay to hold her, financially, he's okay to hold her. She felt that was all she needed. She felt she no longer needed love. She felt if love comes, fine. If love doesn't come, also fine. But then the most important thing was she just wanted to get married just to block out the noise. And I told her, let's start praying tahajjud. From nowhere, I said, let's start praying tahajjud. And I was going through social media one day and I saw a prayer, "Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin fakir." So we started that. I don't know how many we did every day, but it was one of our most recited zikr. We started doing that and we started praying tahajjud every day at 3 a.m. I'll wake her or she'll wake me. Even through Ramadan, we will wake up before time for sahur so that we would be able to do our tahajjud before we make sahur. We did that for 6 months straight. And within those 6 months, she met somebody who made her believe in love again. She met somebody who she knew, okay, she wanted to be with that person. She met somebody who made her realize getting married isn't just about just settling for anyone because of societal pressure. She fell in love and she wanted to marry that person. And within that period, the person I was dating, my boyfriend then, now my husband, he got a job. And I think I was happier than he was because I knew it was one step closer to us being together. I mean, he got a job, and within that time, his mom and I started talking. She visited our family. We started talking about marriage. That 6 month tahajjud changed my life. That 6 month tahajjud changed everything for me. Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin fakir changed everything for me. Istighfar changed everything for me. La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu minaz zalimin changed everything for me. Things started going according to how I wanted them to go. It was a long shot. We still had a long way to go, but alhamdulillah, things started falling in place. So sometime in 2019, I was seated in so that is the beginning of the journey towards marriage. There were a lot of hurdles around the way. There were a lot of things that needed to be in place. There were a lot of things I wanted to do right, but Alhamdulillah, that was the beginning of forever for me. And I know the journey was hard. I know it was difficult, but Alhamdulillah.